Hey there, how's everyone doing? We're happy to have you all here from around the world. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the family. Don't forget to like and subscribe. One of the most remarkable things about the Israeli strike on Iran was the element of surprise. Listen carefully. Israel basically wiped out Iran's general staff. They eliminated the chief of staff. That's the second most powerful figure in Iran after the supreme leader, along with the head of the Revolutionary Guard and several top Iranian commanders. This kind of operation could only happen with the element of surprise. Think about it. If there had been no surprise, Iran would have had time to hide those key figures, move them to safer locations, or give them extra protection. But Israel struck before Iran could do anything, and that's why it worked so effectively. Now here's the shocking part. The Israeli newspaper Jerusalem Post revealed that Israel used a strategic deception plan. And get this, it's the same strategy that Egypt used against Israel during the 1973 October War. That's right, Israel copied a tactic from Egypt's playbook. And once I tell you the details, you'll realize it's the exact same thing Egyptians did back then. So yes, Israel relied on Egyptian-style strategic deception to strike Iran. Another interesting point. When Netanyahu came out to speak after the attack, he called the operation the Rising Lion. Now, why that name specifically? Why not something else? Turns out it's a reference from the Torah, specifically from the Book of Numbers, where it says, "A people rises like a lioness and lifts itself up like a lion. It does not lie down until it devours its prey and drinks the blood of the slain." Now you might say, okay, that's just symbolic. Israel is using its religious texts to inspire its people. But no, this is actually a religious war reference. And as you probably know, Israel's been pushing more toward religious conflict lately. And where does that conflict end? In Sinai. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that ever since Netanyahu and the far-right government took over, with figures like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, everything is being framed in religious terms. So yes, Israel is clearly pursuing a religious war. Finally, and this might be the biggest surprise, I came across an article today in The Atlantic, written by Tom Nichols. He described Israel's operation as bold and reckless. He even said this won't just pass without consequences, and that this strike on Iran is completely different from any previous ones. You'll hear some shocking things today, maybe for the first time, but to truly understand it all, I need to walk you through the whole story from the beginning. Today could be a turning point for you, especially regarding what might be the beginning of the end for Iran. So what exactly happened? And why am I saying Israel's surprise tactic was the key? There are several reasons. First, the Jerusalem Post made it clear. This wasn't some last-minute plan. Israel didn't just wake up one day and decide to bomb Iran. No. This has been in the works for a long time. Where did it start? It started with Netanyahu's office leaking rumors of a conflict between him and Donald Trump. Pay attention. Trump had just returned from the Gulf, and Netanyahu was playing up a narrative that they were at odds. At first, it seemed like there was real tension, but later it became clear that wasn't the case. In fact, Netanyahu may have even encouraged the rumors, making it seem like Trump was warning him not to attack Iran alone. Yes, I did. Next question, please. So now the big question is, did the United States approve of Israel's strike on Iran? The answer is clear. Just look at the scale of Israel's operation inside Iran. You don't need official statements or press conferences, just, use common sense. A strike like that couldn't happen without U.S. approval. It's obvious. Trump didn't have to come out and say, yeah, I knew about it, or whatever. I'm telling you straight. The scale of the Israeli operation was massive. They basically took out Iran's general staff. They assassinated the chief of staff of the Iranian army, the second most powerful man in Iran after the supreme leader himself. They also killed the supreme leader's advisor. Can you believe that? They didn't stop there. They also assassinated top commanders in the Revolutionary Guard. Now think about it. When Iran's supreme leader sits down with the general staff to plan a war or a response, who's he even going to talk to now? The experienced people? They're gone. And don't try to convince me that Israel did this without U.S. approval. Come on, this is next level. You're literally talking about wiping out Iran's top military leadership. That's not something done without a green light from America. Here's what happened. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard confirmed that their commander Hossein Salami was killed after Israeli airstrikes hit the Guard's headquarters in Tehran. Also killed was the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, Mohammad Bagheri. The strikes also targeted Iranian nuclear scientists. 6 of them were killed, including Faridun Abbasi Davani and Mohammad Mehdi Tehrani. Now let's talk about how Israel fooled Iran. They started spreading news that Netanyahu's son was getting married soon, and that the Israeli government would shut down its airspace to avoid any threats during the wedding, which was supposedly happening next Tuesday. They said it was a major national event, and all of Israel was distracted preparing for it. Israeli media started covering the wedding like crazy, posting pictures of Netanyahu's son, his fiancée, and talking about the celebration like it was the biggest thing happening in Israel. So naturally, Iran would assume there's no war coming. Then they announced that Netanyahu would be going on vacation in Galilee on Saturday, just to relax and unwind. And that wasn't all. The Israeli media also said that 2 key officials, Ron Dermer and David Barnea, were flying to Washington for talks with the Americans. Now keep in mind, Ron Dermer is Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs. I don't even know what that position really means, but he's Netanyahu's right-hand man. If a war was really about to break out, there's no way he'd leave the country, right? So everyone believed they were both in Washington. Surprise, they weren't. Both of them were actually in Jerusalem, fully involved in the planning. Meanwhile, Israeli media kept saying they were holding meetings in the U.S. All of this, by the way, was reported by the Jerusalem Post. I'm not making this up. Another tactic Israel used was pretending to revive prisoner swap negotiations like they wanted to reach a deal. You'd hear people like Steve Witkoff saying Netanyahu was getting close to agreeing to a deal. But at the last minute, Netanyahu would always back out, making it seem like he wanted a peaceful solution in Gaza, that Israel wasn't thinking about Iran at all. It was all part of the show, just a way to mislead Iran. In reality, Israel was never serious about negotiations. It was just sending a message to Iran. We're too busy with Gaza to even think about you. Even the military operations in Gaza might have been exaggerated. Not all of them were real or followed through. It was just to keep up appearances and fool Iran into thinking Israel was too tied up to launch a major strike elsewhere. And you know what? This kind of strategic deception, it's exactly what we Egyptians did back in the October War of 1973. Remember when President Sadat pretended he was going on a diplomatic trip? Or when Egypt kicked out the Soviet advisors right before the war? Or when Egyptian soldiers acted like they were partying and goofing around, but they were actually preparing for battle? Some soldiers were even told they were going on Umrah, a pilgrimage, or training missions. None of that was true. It was all part of the deception plan. Israel literally copied that exact strategy. And now, they're bragging about it with this Rising Lion operation. You need to understand, we used that trick on them back in 1973. And now in 2025, they're turning around and using it against Iran. That shows you how smart and powerful Egypt's military history is. A tactic we pulled off 50 years ago is still influencing military strategies today. Now, as for how Israel actually made the decision to go to war, again, this comes from the Jerusalem Post. Apparently, Netanyahu first discussed it with the full cabinet. They all agreed unanimously to carry out a military operation against Iran. But when it came time to present the actual battle plan, only a handful of people were in the room. Netanyahu himself, the defense minister, Ron Dermer, David Barnea, and the Mossad chief, those were the only ones who saw the full operation plan and how it would be executed. This attack marks a major strategic shift. Israel has moved from targeting Iran's proxies to directly hitting the head of the octopus, in Tehran itself. Whether it's inside or outside its borders, Israel's national security is now firmly in the hands of its military and security institutions. There are big challenges ahead.